Hello and welcome to another edition of Overcoming Illness. I'm Paula Denoncourt, your host and founder and CEO of Enrich Your Health. I'm a holistic health consultant, been doing my business since about 2010. I do one-on-one coaching, group coaching, speaking engagements, and now my own TV show. And some of the things that I do, I have digital ebooks and recipe books that help people, especially that have suffered from food allergies or autoimmune issues. I suffered from multiple food allergies myself and almost died from them. So if you're looking for recipes that are just very simple, feel free to check out the website. If you're listening, it's ENRICHURHEALTH.com. If you're watching, of course, my website's on the screen. Feel free to just go over to the store and just check it out. A lot of the recipes are dairy-free, gluten-free, low sugar, so they're great for people with food allergy sensitivities, even people that can't lose weight, because you can't lose weight if you suffer with food allergies. One of the things, you can't digest your food. So also, I am looking for more guests for the show. If you've not seen my show ever before, please go back and watch some of the replays. I've had some amazing guests on here that have suffered from anywhere from cancer to mold toxicity to autism to hard of hearing or deaf, you name it, even autoimmune illnesses. So go back and watch the replays on that. But I am looking for guests. So if you've overcome an illness, you're going through an illness, or you're a caregiver like my guest is tonight, you might be a spouse, a mom, an apostle, a pastor, a doctor, or a nurse. We need your stories. The people out there need your stories. They need your help. So I am really excited and I am really thankful to have Mayra Figueroa Clark, that's hard to say, on my show tonight because she has an amazing background. She's going to share with us how her mom suffered from dementia. But not only that, she's a licensed social worker, clinical therapist, trauma professional. It's a mouthful too. And I'm just really excited to have someone like that on the show. I myself, if you've never seen me before, my background is I worked in a prison for 22 years before I got into the line of health, which is how I got multiple food allergies. So Mayra and I have a little bit in common. I kind of know some of the backgrounds of social workers and what they go through and the stress of it all. And now more than ever, I can't even imagine. Mental health is going through the roof with everything going on in this world. So I can't even imagine being in that career. So with further ado, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mayra. Mayra is passionate about dispelling the mental illness stigma and elevating mental health professionals. As a clinical psychotherapist, she empowers individuals, small groups, and couples using experimental workshops. Overcoming trauma through a mindfulness lens, cognitive behavioral treatment, EMDR systems, theory, and psychoeducation, she offers therapy for individuals and small groups who may be grappling with anxiety, depression, work-life balance, executive functioning, and relationship issues. She also offers premarital and newlywed workshops. And with that right there is like, this describes the whole world and what they're going through right now. I will say that. Throughout her 24 years of clinical work, Mayra is a creative, intuitive, compassionate, and bold. She often uses practical strategies with the foundation of a strength-based philosophy. Her professional experience spans from providing treatment or advocacy in courtrooms to hospital care to her own private practice, school-based mental health provider, and most recently, facilitating trainings and workshops on trauma-informed and vicarious trauma self-care for the caregiver, which is just so needed right now. And overcoming burnout. And that's what I dealt with, overcoming the burnout, to name a few. Mayra is most recently proud of providing online therapeutic services and thus being able to provide clinical services to a growing population that, for different reasons, prefer mental health online. Well, I could see if they're suffering with anxiety and all of that, they just don't want to be around people in the world. So I guess I can totally understand that. So welcome, Mayra.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you so much. What an intro. Appreciate you.
Well, we appreciate you being here. So, Myra, tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up? Did you have brothers and sisters? Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about your mom.
I grew up in the Boogie Down Bronx,
Oh, wow.
South Bronx. I did, and I love my small beginnings, but it was really big. I mean, I was faced with so many things as a child. From people were surrounded about we. I was surrounded around drugs and alcohol and all kinds of stuff. I remember in the backyard, not the backyard, but in the recess during recess at school. I remember across the street there being prostitutes. That's how I grew up, and they were the nicest people in the world. There, so there was, and I was in my elementary school, so I was really, really young and really impressionable, and but yeah, I grew up there, and I moved to Northern Virginia to pursue a career in mental health and got a few degrees between American University, Marymount University, and University of Maryland, all in that DMV area. And,
Wow.
and then here I am.
Wow. So, did you have brothers and sisters?
I'm the youngest of three biologically, and I say that because we grew up with a multiple of individuals that my mom would take in, if you will. My parents were the modern day foster parents, if you will. There wasn't anything structured or, you know, legalized. There was no papers, but if someone needed a place to lay their head, my parents always made space. There's a saying in Spanish that if there's floor, there's space. And so my mom would always be like, as long as I got a floor, you got a place to stay. So it didn't matter how many people, but my mom and my dad always had this heart to give to the community and to have their hearts and homes always open.
Wow, that's pretty amazing in itself. Now, growing up in an area like that, did you ever fall into the trap of doing any drugs or anything yourself, or no?
I no, I had amazing parents and
Wow.
pretty strict mom. But she was a force to be reckoned with. You couldn't play with her, and so she fed into. She didn't let me say, she didn't give advice, she gave examples. And she's like, you don't want to be like such and such on drugs, and you don't
Mm,
want to be like her in the street, tricking. And that's the kind of lesson. So it was kind of like like real life in vivo, right? Lessons. Yeah,
yeah.
she did an amazing job. My father died when I was 14, and so there was a lot of single parenting
Mm,
thereon, and even through her own pain of losing her husband, um, she just kept moving on, and she made sure that she poured in
mhm.
consistently.
So, did she keep taking on other kids and everything even after your dad died?
Yeah, oh yeah, that
Wow.
didn't stop. Even like roommates when I was an adult, and I had roommates who, for whatever reasons, parents were not available. Mom took them in. She taught. That was the one thing she, just like in the scripture in Titus, where it's just like, teach older women how to be reverent in their home, teach younger women how to love their husbands and their children. Mom was really into that, passing that torch, that making sure the next generation understood. I mean, I can remember her teaching some of my roommates how to cook and how to clean, how to sew. Those were the important things to her, and it's a dying skill set. And
It's
she would,
sad. It's dying.
right?
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's the dying skills. So she would tell people, you know, you got to have skills. These are the skills of a woman back then. Like she would always say things like that.
And I think we are going backwards a little bit. I think we're starting to bring that back. I mean, as a health coach, I'm seeing a lot of people starting to go back to their roots because there's just so much garbage out there. It's making us sick.
Yeah.
It's like we need to know. I don't even know how to do it, but we need to know how to can, and we need to know how to do all these things.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a lost skill. Like my mom was like that. My mom was so, her hands were just amazing. Like she could fix anything in the house. My dad didn't do it. She could sew. She used to sew our clothes when we were little.
Mm-hmm.
She could crochet. If she made anything crafty, it was always like, it would come out amazing. Like she'd do with ceramics. It was beautiful. Like me, if I do something crafty, I love to do it, but it doesn't always come out beautiful. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm like you.
yeah, I mean, it'll be okay. But her stuff was just like, whoa. Like, yeah. She just had amazing, like, craft abilities like that. Even her cooking, too. Her cooking was never bad. Mm-hmm.
I struggled being a teenager around my mom because I did not want to get married. I did not want to be this housewife that she was portraying me. I was her only girl. And there was this like pressure that I felt she was putting on me. So she tried to teach me how to sew, but I was like so rebellious, if you will, and stubborn that I was like, okay, so I didn't really learn how to sew like she did. You know, I did learn how to cook by force and clean by force. But there were certain things that were just, standard for her. Truly, truly, truly. Um, she told me once when I was an adult, she said, I miss being a wife. I miss being a housewife. I loved being a housewife and washing clothes and folding them and seeing the house neat and making sure there was a home cooked meal. And in my mind, I felt like that was,
Slavery?
it was oppressive for me. I'm like, no, I want a career.
Right?
I don't want to sit at home and fold clothes. That doesn't seem appealing to me. But that her wisdom, I'm almost 50, and that wisdom is ringing in my ears now. Like, wow, that was amazing.
I know my mom too. Like she, her house was always immaculate. And even to like the day she died, like she was really good with her money too. She was always organized. And here's a funny story. I had to move from one condo to another. Now I moved from Massachusetts to North Carolina. So in North Carolina, I moved from one condo to another. And just a couple of weeks ago, the condo I moved from, the people that own it got in touch with me about they're renting it out and stuff. So we were talking, and they found this little booklet that I had from my mother. And I'm like, how did you find that? I'm like, I checked every nook and corner of that place, right? And it was just this little, almost like an index booklet. And you know what it was? It was her money, like all her budget.
Yeah.
Till the day she died, like she still was, but like you could see the scribbles because she started getting congestive heart failure.
Yeah.
But she was still scribbling the money, well, the amount of money, like whatever, the electric bill or whatever, water bill.
The bills and
Me, I'm like, I'm so busy, I don't write all that stuff down, and I should. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She was so like her house, even when she got sick, like her house was still pretty clean, like with the exception of the rugs sometimes need to be vacuumed. She couldn't push the vacuum anymore. But she still made sure the dishes were done.
Oh,
Her tub was still clean. I'm like, how is she doing all this? She's like not even.
That's what was important to our
Yeah.
foremothers. It was important, and I now I now understand that wisdom.
Yeah.
And when I think about that scripture that says, "Be busy at home," I get that. Even as a woman in her profession, I understand that and I embrace it now.
Mm.
Yeah. So it is important. I make sure that the way I schedule my clients, I do not schedule anyone between 3 and 6 because that's my time that my kids get home
Yep.
and my husband gets home. And so I want the house to feel and smell and look a specific way when they come home because of my mom.
Oh, that's awesome. You
Yeah.
need that. You need a little bit of time. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get that. Yep. And you need time to give to your family. Like, here's another thing, nothing to do with my mom, but I've noticed with business people, a lot of them are hustlers. They're hustling all the time. Now, I've seen one in particular. He's on Clubhouse all day long. Now I see him on TikTok all hours, constantly hustling. I'm like, and I think he's got like a little girl. I forget what like a little. He's got a family, put it that way. And I'm
Mhm.
like, doesn't he ever spend any time with his child?
Mhm.
Like, that makes me sad. Hustling. I mean, yeah, he's helping people, but you've got a family. They're gonna walk out on you if you don't spend any time with them.
And that's where it is. Be busy at home, be self-control, be busy. We've lost the concept of rest. We've lost the
Yes,
concept of the
yes,
Sabbath. I know this a lot, and especially the Western world here in North America. We don't understand what it is to chill out and
yeah,
vacation and be still and be mindful.
yeah.
And unfortunately, like you, I was forced to kind of lay down. Like that scripture in Psalms 23 where it says, "I make you lay down in quiet
Mhm.
pastures." That's our body and our
Yeah,
spirit saying, "I need you to lay down." Like,
that's
be,
why we get sick. That's why we get sick. It's
and
forced.
that's what sickness is. The sickness is your
Yeah,
body's kind of like on a bullhorn going, "Stay still." Like,
yep,
I need to recover because God
yeah,
created our bodies to restore itself and to
right,
heal. So yeah,
right.
this concept of rest is kind of like, it's null and void. And in
We're
fact, it's
taught
kind
to
of
feel
looked,
guilty. We're
yeah,
taught to
it's
feel
looked
guilty.
upon like weak, or if you're not grinding, if you're not working, and where are you, who's up at 3 a.m. doing this and doing that. And there's a season for that, but I don't think that should be all of the time. There's a seasons of work and there's seasons of rest.
Yep. I mean, I moved to North Carolina thinking it'd be a little bit more laid back. I wanted a more laid back world, and it doesn't exist. Everybody's getting more fast paced. I don't care where you go. It just doesn't exist. So
Sad.
I don't know. So tell us a little bit about your mom and when you started to realize she might have dementia. How long? How old were you? What was going on?
So I want to backtrack a little bit more before she had an actual dementia diagnosis. But before that, my mom had a pretty big heart attack in her 50s. Um, and I was in college at the time. I remember, coming back from Northern Virginia to New York. That's where she lived at the time. And just, trying to negotiate all what was going on. My brothers were there, other family members were there to support her, what have you. But yeah, so just having that, um and then she sprung back from that, and then she had high blood pressure and then high cholesterol, and so she started in like her 50s, 55, just having a numerous health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And in that came the diagnosis of depression. And so, it's like that chicken and the egg. When you look at mental health, sometimes there's records and research that show that individuals who have heart attacks usually struggle with depression, but they're not sure which one is which. So she was under a doctor's care, and she started complaining of like this pain. She would say it was just like right on the top of her head, like right there. She would complain of it. When we finally got a little scan, and the neurologist got involved and said, there is some atrophy to your brain. So we're gonna continue to review it. But there's over a dozen different types of dementia or cognitive. Yeah, I know. I was surprised too. Or cognitive atrophy. So the neurologist was like, it looks and feels like vascular, because vascular is the heart, and because the heart has been compromised for so many years, that it could have been vascular. And then he also said that it could be depression, because depression has the same symptoms or looks very similar to early onset dementia. So he was treating both.
It
And
almost sounds like she had an autoimmune issue.
I don't know, like the one
Mm.
thing she didn't want was an autopsy. She made sure she's like, I
Wow.
lived a really good life. I don't want an autopsy. I just don't, want that. So she, I believe she was about 75 when we started seeing things, and she was about 76 when she was officially diagnosed.
Mm-hmm. And how old were you? You were going to college.
No, at that age, you're gonna make me do math. I was in my 40s. I was married, had children.
Okay.
Yeah. So, um,
And she was living by herself? Or
yeah,
was she?
she had been living. Yeah, she's been living independently. When I first got married and had my first son, she moved in with us, and that's part of our Puerto Rican tradition, where you come and help, your grandchildren kind of wean off and
Mm.
things like that. So she helped us a lot, and then I immediately got pregnant. So she was with us for a couple of years, and then she was like, "Oh, it's time for me to move." And then she found an apartment about 10 minutes away from where we lived at the time. So she was
Oh, that's nice.
living a very vibrant life. She had her own car. She drove herself everywhere she needed to, in her 70s, late 70s, all the way up to her 80s. She was driving on her own, going to her appointments, going to Target and Walmart or what have you. She loved thrifting. She just was the light wherever she went. She was just like, in her building, she would knock on the doors and she's like, "Ladies, let's go. I'm going to Walmart. Who's coming with
Oh.
me?" And everybody be like, "Give me 10 minutes." And for someone who's in their 70s, 10 minutes is really like 45. And it would just be so cute. So I would call her and she wouldn't be around, and I would be like, "Mommy, where are you?" And she would be like, "Oh, I went shopping, or I went to get my hair done, or we went to a movie or whatever." She was always very active, so she was very vibrant. It was,
Mm.
but every year she would go to her neurologist from about 76 years old on to her death, and they would do a scan and they would do the exam, and there was very little movement. There was very little until about 2019. There was some decline. And that exercise that they give, I'll give you three words, if you can remember them, red hat, horse, whatever. And then they'll ask you a whole bunch of questions, and then they'll come back. And that's kind of how they determine the retention of her short term. And for a long time she was in the 20s, like 19 to 20. And then she started, going down,
Mm.
lower and lower. And then I noticed other things. Her cooking wasn't as good. She was either adding too much sugar or too much salt.
Wow.
So because we never used measuring. It was always like,
Yeah.
a little bit of this,
Oh, yeah.
Like, so there was no measuring. There was no real recipe. It was like, "Come watch me." That was what she always says. Watch me so you can learn. Pa que aprenda. Always. That's watch me. That's learn in Spanish. Aprenda. So,
Mm.
she was like, "Watch me so you can learn." So that's what she would do. And I realized like she'll say, "Oh, come over, I made you some soup or I made some fish." And I would be like, "Oh, this is salty, or this is vinegary, or this," there was like something super off
Oh
about
wow.
her cooking. And I started noticing that.
Mm,
The biggest decline was the pandemic, because she was such a social person, so full of life,
mm,
so community based. Then suddenly the whole world shuts down.
mm,
And because she lived in an active living community, they were, the highest risk
mm,
individual population. They told them not to move at all. Like they are not to, like,
right.
we
Right.
didn't know then what we know now, right? We didn't know. And so that fear was just pour into, so where there was people coming in and out of her home and her into others, and they would sit and share a meal, or they would go to the community room down the hall, or that wasn't there. The hairdresser didn't come anymore downstairs, and the bus that would take them to different places, the post office, and stopped running. Everything shut down, and I saw the most deterioration then.
Mm, wow. So it's interesting you were saying it has to do with depression that would make it worse. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, it's also the neurons, right?
Right.
Because they're not firing anymore. She was sitting at home watching TV,
Right.
watching the news mostly, which was like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So the neurons didn't fire, and we were the only people she saw. I was the only one who went to visit on a regular basis, 2 or 3 times a week. My
Mm,
children would come once a week, and it was very purposeful, where I would have them wash their hands and
right.
up their
Right.
clothes at her door. My biggest fear, Paula, was that I would bring her coronavirus. My
Mm,
biggest fear, because what we saw, right? Every
right.
day, all the time. So
Right.
I was like, oh my goodness, the last thing I want to do is
Make her
be
sick. Yeah.
the person that makes my mama sick. And then
Right.
she has to be in a hospital, and then I can't visit and I can't see her, and her die alone in a hospital. Oh,
Mm,
that was like I would pray daily,
mm,
Lord, don't let mom die of COVID. That's
wow.
what I would pray daily, because that was one of I held that as such a big fear.
Mm, wow. So she had previous issues was heart attack and what else? She had.
High blood pressure, high cholesterol.
Did she have joint pain at all?
Oh, yes.
That's why I'm wondering if it was an autoimmune issue. Because in the Lyme disease community, or even sometimes lupus, they have a lot of those symptoms, dementia-like symptoms, um, joint pain, a lot of those types of things. So Myra, you don't know, but um, I've helped a lot in the Lyme disease community. So there's a lot of other illnesses that are related, or I shouldn't say related. There's similar symptoms to Lyme disease or even lupus. They all have like similar symptoms. A lot of times, heart is a similar symptoms. The joint pain, the dementia, it affects the brain. Sometimes Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS,
Wow.
fibromyalgia. They all fall under that same umbrella. They may not be one and the same illness, but they're very, very similar. So that's why I was asking. Did anything run in the family? Did anybody get anything in the family?
Yeah, arthritis runs in the family, and heart
Okay.
disease runs in the family.
Hmm. Yeah, there could be an autoimmune issue in your bloodline
Mm.
that made your mom get dementia. And then of course, what triggers it, right? Is we just did a show on the spiritual root of illness. So you hit the nail on the head. I'm sure she was depressed from the pandemic. She was depressed after your dad died.
Yeah.
That's what happened to my mom. My dad died. She got breast cancer right after that.
Mm.
Yep. So, I mean, the depression probably triggered it, but I bet she had something going on in her body already, and that's why she was starting to get all this stuff. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, Paula, because in the world of mental health, we're realizing that depression and anxiety uh, can be related to inflammation.
Yep.
And so this whole, we've gone so many decades separating mental health from medical or physical
Right.
health. And the truth of the matter is that you can't really have one without the other. And that if you are struggling with stress or anger or bitterness or resentment, it's gonna affect your body. And if your body is affected with illness or disease, it's gonna affect your mental health. And
Yep.
I'm really happy being in this field and seeing that coming together as one. But my goodness, what a struggle to help individuals understand that mental health is as important as physical
Physical.
health,
Yes.
dental health,
Yep.
financial health, right? Like people will get a financial advisor in a heartbeat. People will go
Right.
get a PCP in a heartbeat. Oh, I need a specialist. I want to get pregnant. Let me go to an OB. Let me, really quick. But then when they're struggling, they don't see that a mental health professional can help. So it was difficult even for my mom. So for her to even having me as a daughter, knowing what I did for a living, I mean, heck, she paid for the school, right? So she knows,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
knew, right? Like put your money to, work, mama, right? But she knew what I did for a living, but she still didn't trust mental health professionals. She
Mm.
didn't trust the diagnoses. She didn't, she just felt like it was all about you think I'm crazy and that's why you and it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking.
Mhm. I can imagine. Yeah, it's tough, but they are seeing more and more that some of the reasons people are struggling with mental health is there's an illness there. So a lot of times, Mara, like around the holidays, especially, we've got one coming up now. Easter's coming. You're going to be around your relatives. You're going to be, a lot of these people with Lyme disease, or I don't even just say Lyme, autoimmune illness, they have problems, but it's the illness. They have OCD, they have rage. Just love on them anyway. It's one day if they're like all over the place, like, you can't do this and can't do that, and I can't have this and I can't. Don't get all crazy about it. It's one day. Love on them anyways. It's hard for them to even deal with the day. Just love on them. Just
Yeah.
be compassionate. Don't judge them. They may not even know they're ill. A lot of people out there don't even know they're ill. But most of the time, here's the key components. If you're out there listening, if you know somebody in the family that has a lot of joint pain, that has a lot of stomach issues, heart issues, can't remember things like dementia, rage all the time, depression, anxiety, these types of things that usually an autoimmune illness underneath there. So so what? Don't judge them that day of the holiday and get all upset that they're acting a certain way. Just tolerate it, get through it, and don't worry about it, because I see the other side of that. I am in a lot of different Facebook groups that I joined when I was helping out in the Lyme disease community, and I'm still an advocate. And I see their anxiety about going through these holidays and dealing with the relatives and dealing with the food, even the right
Yeah.
food that they have to have. So what if they're, you know, they have to have things a certain way or have to have certain foods, or they get a little angry about whatever. I can't even tell you, but I just can't stress that enough, because it's more and more common, because they do have an autoimmune illness. More and more people are walking around with it. They just don't even know they have it. They don't know they have it, but those are the keys. They have fibromyalgia. They say, they've got joint pain, lots of things like that, memory loss, and they don't have to be older. They can be
Yeah.
young.
Unfortunately, I'm hearing dementia diagnoses in people as early as in their 30s. Like,
It's probably an autoimmune issue.
it's like, oh my goodness, like that is really, and it's scary. I mean, I can't imagine. Like, I can imagine being unable to have all your faculties so young, you know?
Well,
Like,
listen to this one. This blew me away. They had to build a new unit in Massachusetts in a assisted living facility type place. I think that's what it was called.
mm-hmm.
For those with MS. Not older people either. They're in their like 40s, but the family can't take care of them anymore.
Multiple sclerosis. That's interesting.
Multiple sclerosis.
As a child, I knew of one person who had MS.
Mm-hmm.
As an adult, I know dozens.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think that there's something going on. There is.
So, yeah, all that to say that this mental health, some of it can, you can probably speak to it more than I can. Some of it can be, whatever you're dealt with, like traumatic experiences growing up, whatever you're dealt with. But a lot of it, I would say a good 80% of it is just an autoimmune issue, and they don't even realize it. It can even be as simple as a vitamin mineral deficiency. This can affect depression, anxiety. Just not getting enough B vitamins affects it. Not saying it causes it, not medical advice, not meant to treat, heal, or cure any illness on this show, but these are some things that contribute. People don't realize it. I even heard, this one even blew me away. I was actually at a health expo, and I heard a mom talking about her kid. Do you know, it was, I think that if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, the child was getting too much protein, and that was causing them to have issues.
Huh.
Now, it wasn't not enough protein, because
it was too much
protein. It was too much protein, and they were like acting violent and things like that. They diagnosed them. So you never know what could be causing things. You've got to get to the root of it. Everybody's yeah.
What I do know is what can help circumvent and treat the symptoms of it. I know that.
Share some of that with us.
So one of the things that mindfulness is the biggest thing. We talked about this beforehand, Paula, is that we live in a society that doesn't know and respect and honor rest, right? And here we are in our world where everything rests. The sun goes up, it goes down. It's supposed to be a cycle. Even the trees rest, the ground rests, everything in the world rests. But we as adults and humans, we are deciding, I don't know why, especially here in the Western culture, that grinding and hustling is the best thing that you could have. It's actually a badge that we wear, like, girl, I was up to 3 a.m. doing my videos. How about you, And it's kind of like, okay, the only way your body could restore is through rest. The only way your mind could restore is through rest. One of the first things that I assess is sleep. How many hours of sleep do you have a night? And then when you wake up, do you feel rested? Because it's one thing to say, oh, I had 8 hours of sleep, but I wake up and I'm exhausted. Well, you're not resting. You're not having enough REM. Or something's happening with your wavelengths, But I do know that one is rest. And that is the way we restore everything. We regenerate ourselves through rest. The other thing is breathing. Because we're running all the time, we don't take nice, deep breaths unless we're frustrated. When you're frustrated, you take this like, all right, that's your body going, I need oxygen. And in fact, one of the neurologists that was working with my mom, he suggested that she wear a CPAP. The CPAP machine forces oxygen into the brain. And he's like, one of the things that makes the brain atrophy is the lack of oxygen. And he said, this is the neurologist. He said, we don't breathe right.
Don't.
We don't breathe right. And so, like, from the medical side and the mental health side, breath work is ultimately important in order to give your body the opportunity to rest, to restore, to recover, to heal.
Yep.
So I would say definitely rest. I would say breathing. And then there's third component, which I don't think we take as seriously and was pulled away from us. It's community and surrounding yourself around individuals that bring you joy and love and raise your spirit in a way that no one else can. And if you don't have that community, you will struggle. You could breathe, have yoga for the rest of your life, and you could rest as well. But part of rest and part of restoring is having that community that kind of that pours into you, supports you, and you pour into them and support them. God did not create us to be on an island. We were created to be together and connect one another. And this wise woman told me once, she said, I was struggling with family, which who doesn't?
Right.
And
Right.
she said, you will always have relatives, Maida, always have relatives. And sometimes you won't like them and they won't like you. But no matter what, God will bring you family. And they might not look like you, they might not have your same DNA, they might not even speak your language. Nonetheless, you will always have family. And that, in the midst of my mourning and grieving for my mama, I felt and feel alone often. Like it's grief, it's the biggest grief if I could describe it as size. It's the biggest grief I've ever had to hold and experience. And I have a supportive community and great friends, but I consistently feel alone. When she but part of that was this fight that I was having, this internal conflict of trying to pull my family close to me because I lost the main person of my family unit. I was trying to pull my family close to me. I realized that I, I have created my own family, and it doesn't necessarily have to be those people who look like me, who have my DNA
Right. Right.
biologically connected to me, those people who are spiritually connected to me. But building community is another pillar, if you will, of just really sustaining mental wellness, um, and restoring from past hurts and grief.
And I'll also add to that. I've talked about this on other shows, but especially like in business, you need to surround yourself with go-getters, you know, business people that are thriving,
Yeah.
not like, oh, I can't make a sale and I can't do that. You know what I mean? You don't want to be around this, even if you are struggling, you still don't want to be around all the same type of people because it's going to bring you down.
Yeah.
You've got to be around positive, upbeat people that are going to motivate you, inspire you, help keep you going. You've got to get around those types of people.
Yeah.
If you are depressed, yeah, it's good to have a few friends here and there that might be in that realm. You can help each other, but don't let that be your only avenue. Like I've seen it in the Lyme disease community. They all hang around each other and they all moan and groan. You've got some people that are going to help bring you up. Have some friends that are just like you. That's fine. But get yourself brought up. You need to be, you know what I mean? So I've talked about that in other shows. So I think it made a world of difference for me. I was in a business group, love them all, I still do, but they weren't growing. And I knew it. I felt it. I'm like, I gotta go where it's growing. I gotta go where it's thriving. Now I'm in North Carolina. Oh my God, this place is growing like you wouldn't believe. It's
Oh,
growing
that's
like crazy.
fantastic. That is so fantastic.
Yep, you've got to change. You can't just stay stagnant.
No.
So I wanted to add that. So Mayra, tell us do you have like any I mean, being in the mental health professional for 24 years, I was in a dispatch in a prison for 22 years. Tell us some testimonials, maybe even a wild, funny story, whatever you've got. I mean, you must have some good stories to share from 24 years of this.
Oh my gosh, I have tons.
I know, I can imagine. You need to write a book, but
You need to give me a category.
Couple that stick out for you.
You need to give me a category of what I think my favorite thing of what I get to do is seeing the most resistant client, the most skeptical client come to me and feel like this is not going to work. This is all, yin yang stuff. This is all psychobabble. I've even gotten, this is crunchy, hippie, stuff. And I embrace it. I embrace the challenge. And then having them come week after week and week after week and seeing them heal little by little by little by little. And then being able to connect the dots. Remember the first day? Now look at day 80, look where you are now, and seeing that, I love prescribing. Like I prescribe walks. I say, look, get out, get some vitamin D, go out every single day. I go out I work from home. This is my office, right? So I work from home. Right. This is it. It's home. My kitchen is down the road, right there. And so I work from home. So I have to force myself out.
Right.
Because I know the benefits of getting vitamin D and the benefits of walking barefooted. I talk about grounding a lot, or earthing, depending on where you come from. And a lot of them are like, this mental health stuff is some babble stuff. And I love to see the healing. I have seen individuals who are severely anxious and severely depressed, after 3 or 4 months, find themselves back to themselves, like start breathing life into them and understanding. And it's not so much that they get to heal. I feel like my mission, my calling, my job is to educate my clients. So when you do come to me, it's not just me helping you get through this, whatever mountain that is, but giving you all the tools and skills you need to put on your backpack. So then when you hit another mountain, you don't need to call me. You can go to your backpack because you've been through this. You know how to get to the other side of this.
Yeah. So what kind of changes have you seen in people? Like, do they get better jobs, better careers, marriages that didn't fail? What types of things have you seen?
It's I've seen a nice big gamut. I think I've seen individuals who couldn't come out of bed, couldn't get out of bed, was completely overeating, completely depressed, go to working outside the house, working out, losing weight. And you could see that all in, because I do all of my sessions are virtual, just like this. And so I could see that from being, under the covers, the first few sessions, to then like being in the bedroom, but still with the covers on, to then being out in the living room and having the sun hitting their face, and, having them tell me their stories of, I celebrated this, I graduated from this training, I went to school for this, this, I've reconciled with my mom, I've been able to have conversations with my estranged sisters, and seeing that healing that happened. That's one beautiful thing that I think my mom had given me is to see past the person and see a person who could be, even though the person is before you. Okay. Right? So whatever it's before you, it's similar to what you were talking about, like when you go into the holidays and you know that you're gonna, have Auntie Emma who is OCD, right? So that you just gonna have to just see Auntie Emma for who she is.
Right.
And so mom used to do that so well. She would look at people and she would see you and she would see what you could be. And she would treat you as such. And she loved you in that. And I watched her, and sometimes I felt like she's gonna be taken advantage of. And sometimes she felt the same, like here she is giving and no one's giving to her. But I was able to see very clearly how my mom set that example as a woman of God of I do what God has told me to do. He does the rest.
Mm. Yeah.
I recently went through one box of hers because that's all I could do right now. Today she makes 4 months.
Mm.
She has entered the glory of heaven,
Mm-hmm.
and so I have not been able to go through her stuff without a lot of fear and anxiety on my own part. So I went through one box, and in that there was some journals and there was jewelry and things of that nature. She had written a letter to my brothers with scriptures on it, like almost praying over them.
Wow.
And it took me I just cried and cried and cried. I took a picture of them and sent them to my prospective brothers so they can see it themselves. But I just cried and cried and cried because I just thought, what a woman of God what a woman of wisdom, right? That she
Yeah.
was able to project, and it was written 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like written when she was like on her deathbed. No, it was like 4 years ago. She was vibrant. She was driving. She was traveling, all that stuff. And she was writing these letters to her sons. And she wrote one for me as well. Just saying, hey, and wrote scriptures in it. This is my wish for you. This is my blessing to you. This is what I leave you with. This is how God will be for you. And I just thought, man, only someone who's close to the Lord could have that kind of wisdom to leave that impression and fingerprint, if you will, in this world. Like she forethought everything, like King David.
Mm.
She thought about everything, and that was one of the things she thought about. Is how can I leave God with my sons and my children and my grandchildren?
Yeah, I think at some point when you're ready, I don't know how many she has. How many did she have? Like a lot of journals?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
That's a
so
lot.
I
She
think that at some point when you're ready, you'll probably put those into a book, and then it doesn't have to be as personal like for you guys. You know what I mean? It'll be personal to whoever's reading it, and then they'll heal from it.
That would
Whatever
be really
the
cool.
scriptures are, whatever, you know what I mean? You might have to tweak it slightly, but not too much because you want to keep it as, close to her as possible. But yeah, you probably put that into a book, make it like a healing, some type of a healing journal for people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and God has dropped that into my head a few times as well because handwriting is not something that's done anymore. Journaling in a book is uncommon. It's
Right.
these are practices, again, back to those practices. These are practices that are not done on a regular basis.
But going back to mental health, right? Think of all the people that are ill out there. If they were to pick up this book, what it would do for them.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Yeah.
that's a good idea,
And
Paula.
then, and just to let you know, like I remember years ago, a prophet said to me, he said, it's not like we were saying this earlier, it's not about us. People are waiting for what we have. So, like I wrote a book, it's But God, I'm Still Here. It's an anthology. So, of course, I only have a chapter in there. But there's 9 other women in that book that, whoever gets that book, they're healing from those stories. I cried reading those stories.
Yeah.
I know these people from Adam.
Yeah.
And it was just the woman was such overcomers. It was amazing. So just think when you're picking up those journals, and as hard as it is to go through it, you got to remember who's waiting on that other side for what she's got. Whatever that book's ready to be, who's waiting for that? Who needs that? Who's
Yeah.
sitting in that bed with their covers over their head that book will get them out of that bed? So just think of those types of things and it'll help get you through it. Another thing I did, I totally get it. My mom used to give me everything under the sun. I mean, she bought a mop, I got a mop. If she bought whatever, and I was always hesitant to give it away. It was because like my mother gave it to me. So I had a cellar full of stuff because I didn't need it all, right? She was always like going to the Christmas tree shop. Oh, here's a little gadget. I'm gonna get one for her, one for me, one for and it's so much stuff, and I never had the heart to get rid of it. There was an emotional attachment
Yeah.
to getting rid of stuff because she gave it to me.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, when she did die, and I had to move, I didn't want to go through the stuff because I just didn't want to look at all the stuff that she gave me.
Mm.
I had the hardest time, but I will say I finally got to the point, and again, it has to do with like that book, thinking about what's it going to do for someone else.
Yeah.
It's just sitting in the cellar, let someone else have it. And I did finally start to let it go. I was, selling stuff or giving it away, whatever it was. And I remember like one time somebody came over and they're like, oh, this will be great for the after school kids or whatever it was. Oh, my kids are going to love this. And that brought me so much joy.
Yeah.
To know that whatever she had was giving me, not so much a mop, but you know what I mean, for years, that it was bringing someone else joy and they could enjoy it. And it's not sitting in my basement just because she gave it to me.
Right.
So I hope that helps you when you do go through all her stuff, all her journals, people waiting for her journals. If you got stuff to give away, don't worry about it. There's somebody out there that needs it. So I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. That's helpful.
Yeah.
And
Like I said, I had a hard time going through it, looking at it. It wasn't the release. Now she's gone. I'm okay with releasing it. I just didn't want to look at it.
oh, I don't want to release it. That's like it. Well, it's it smells like her. It feels like her. I hear her voice through all of this. And it's tons of journals, tons of Bibles. She has about 3 or 4 Bibles. It's tons and tons of pictures. She was a holder of pictures. She held. If you gave her a picture of you and your family when you were 5 years old, she put it in a frame and put it on her shelf. And so she has at least 2 boxes of pictures, and
that's hard. Yeah.
It is, and it's beautiful too, because again, she was the holder, so people would come to see their baby pictures, and they came to her to know that she was the holder of it. And as I said earlier, she loved her people like her own. So she had daughters and sons who weren't her biological daughters and sons that she held their pictures of their wedding and pictures of their children and held them like she would mine.
Mm.
So she has those. Some people I don't even know. I'm like, who is this? And
I get some of those too. I'm like, pictures. I don't know these people.
I'm like, who is this? Looks like a cute couple. And you see that same person 2 or 3 times. They're like, I don't know how to even find this person. But yeah, so
I know. I've got some beautiful, like they're my grandmothers, like the old-fashioned little christening gowns are on them, and I'm like, what do I do with these? I don't have the heart to get rid of them. They're so beautiful. But anyways, we've only got about 2 minutes left. I want to thank Rebecca for being here and anybody else who's watching.
Oh, that's my sister.
Oh, thank you so much for being on.
Yes.
If she has any questions or anything you want to pop in the chat, feel free in our last 2 minutes. Mayra, thank you so much for being with us tonight. So tell people how they can reach you, what you've got going on. I know you said you might have a class or something, so anything you want to share, go for it.
Yeah, I provide a free breath work class every Monday from 12 to 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. And you could find me on Restored Mind 30 on Instagram. So that's Restored Mind 30, the number 30, on Instagram. And on there, there's, you could click on to how to join the breath work. And so it is for everyone, anywhere. It's not therapy, so it's not based on any state or city or diagnoses or nothing, and it's completely free, and there's no obligation. So yeah, so that's where Restored 30, Restored Mind at 30 in Instagram, and every Monday 12 to 12:30 Eastern Standard Time for breath work. And I am accepting clients. I am licensed in DC at this time, and would love to hear from you guys.
Well, thank you again, Mayra, for being on. And once again, I want to remind everybody, I am looking for guests. So, and I am going to be looking for sponsors too. So if you're looking to get your business out there, you've got anything health related, I pretty much prefer that, but if not, I'm open to suggestions as well. Supplements, anything to do with health, you know, like really good organic products, anything like that. You want to get them out there, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to me by Instagram, Facebook Messenger, or my phone number, 508-330-9665. Text is best, and then I'll get back to you and we'll set something up. So with that, yeah, and I also offer business funding. So with all these banks having all kinds of issues right now and you need funding and quickly, come see me. Yeah, come see me. There's a lot of things going on with the banking right now. So we can get you funded in 24 hours to a week, whereas banks can take up to 6 months. And with everything going on with the banks right now, you might not want to wait that long. It'd be helpful even to have some money on the side ready for you with your business so you can keep it going with all this stuff going on. So with that, we will see you next week. Next week, I have a guest, Miss Judy, who has overcome a stroke. So please get ready for that. She's an amazing person and friend of mine. I love Miss Judy. So I'm looking forward to that show next week. That'll be next Sunday at 7 p.m. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye. Thank you so much, Paula.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mayra.